Andrew's happy ending. Paid by you. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. On this Monday morning, you perhaps awoke and it was still dark. Maybe the rain was rattling the window pane as you lay there beneath your duvet, hitherto known as the continental quilt, and groaned as the alarm beseeched that you emerge from your cocooned warmth and that you begin the day. Perhaps you thought to yourself, ugh, another day at the grindstone doing a particular job where, having organised things on the home front, you had to leave your home, undertake a boring and dull commute in the cold and the dark to attend a job that you don't particularly like, to earn the money on which you pay taxes. It might be the case that you slogged through snow. It might be the case that you were there holding onto your umbrella as the rain lashed down as you made your way to your workplace. Perhaps you fired up your computer at home, not needing to venture out into the weather for you work at home. But nevertheless, you'd much rather spend the day relaxing, doing things that you enjoy, than being a wage slave. Perhaps that encompasses the day as began for you. If it is the case that you're there with nose to the grindstone, continuing to earn and pay your taxes, you'll be delighted and thrilled by the latest revelation in respect of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and his massive sense of entitlement. His sense of entitlement being so vast that it threatens to swallow up the solar system. Sean Goughlin, writing for the BBC, tells us, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor charged taxpayers for massages and excessive travel costs while working as the UK's trade envoy, whistleblowing retired civil servants have claimed. Whoop-be-fucking-do. So, in the last years that you have been working and diligently paying your taxes to the man, part of that was getting spunked on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, potentially spunking as a consequence of him getting massages. Yes, I bet you're thrilled at that thought, aren't you? That you faced another tongue lashing from your miserable tyrant of a boss as you sank into your seat and groaned to yourself, oh gosh, I wish I didn't have to do this job. Or perhaps there you were, up to your elbows in gunk as you sought to unblock some form of drain, thinking, good Lord, why am I doing this? Perhaps you were there having to mop up the vomit and feces as a consequence of your role caring for unwell people, and you were shaking your head saying, what a way to make a living. Well, you'll be thrilled and no doubt heartened by the fact that your endeavour amongst the guts and mess of the world meant that part of it was being shaved off so that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor could quite possibly have been enjoying a rub and tug, or at the very least having his doughy form massaged by some no doubt bored masseur. One former civil servant who worked in the UK's Trade Department in the early 2000s had been so annoyed by Andrew's request to cover the cost of massage services, and one wonders if that's a euphemism, that he'd refused to pay it, but says he was then overruled by senior staff. I thought it was wrong. I said we mustn't pay it, but we ended up paying it anyway, he told the BBC about a claim that followed a visit by Andrew to the Middle East. The Department for Business and Trade has not challenged the claim about Andrew's time as envoy between 2001 and 2011, but has referred to the ongoing police investigation into the former prince. The BBC approached Andrew for a response to these claims. He has always rejected any wrongdoing in his associations with paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein and denial of course being the first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defence, any personal gain from his role as trade envoy. Andrew's role as trade representative was unpaid, but he had the support of civil servants and taxpayer funding for his overseas trips. In the wake of the revelations in the Epstein files, the former civil servant who worked for the former UK Trade and Investment Department says he regrets that Andrew was allowed to get away with expenses for a massage when it might have been a chance to check his behaviour. "I can't say it would have stopped him, but we should have flagged that something was wrong," says the retired civil servant. Another source, a former senior Whitehall official, backs up the claim. This former civil servant, who oversaw finances in this area, had seen similar expenses for Andrew's trips and says he has absolutely no doubt about its authenticity. Accordingly, this wasn't a one-off, where he has his Pillsbury Doughboy form rubbed by somebody else. No, with quite the possibility that it resulted in a happy ending. No. He's done it several times, once again reinforcing how this man has no boundary recognition, that he operates with a vast sense of entitlement, that he deems it appropriate that he has a massage. Well, that's okay. There's no law against having a massage. But he then deems, I'm not going to pay for it, I'm going to recover it as an expense. And it's not the case, for instance, that I'm asking Chuck, my brother, to pay for it. No, I'll get the hard-pressed British taxpayer to underpin my life of luxury. I'll have excessive travel costs. You scumbags, you peasants can pay for it all. And meanwhile, I'll also have a massage, thank you very much, because it's very taxing eating lobster and drinking champagne, you know, and laughing at my own jokes. Wah, 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 wah. And thus it comes to pass that this buffoon of a narcissist, this self-absorbed simpleton, deems that it is entirely appropriate for him to submit excessive costs in relation to travel, but also to get his massaging costs paid. Both of the former civil servants wanted to remain anonymous, but have spoken separately to the BBC about their claims. The BBC has not seen proof of the claim about charging for massages from over 20 years ago, but the BBC has seen documentary evidence of the whistleblower's closeness to this area at the time. There is nothing unlawful suggested in Andrew's behaviour. Well, presumably because it was approved of, it can't be described as unlawful. But of course he's got some brass neck, as you'd expect from him, for submitting the claim in the first place. He, of course, doesn't see that there's anything wrong with that. That is the entitled and privileged attitude that prevails with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, that he can have massages that can be submitted as an expense and that the British taxpayer pays for them. There's no sense of guilt or conscience on his part. There's nothing to restrain him. There's nothing that gives him consideration to pause and go, should I really be putting in for this? Should I not pay for it myself, or even ask perhaps if Chuck will cover the cost? It's not really appropriate for me to ask the British taxpayer. Doesn't enter his mind. There's nothing there to restrain him from behaving this way, which is why, as a consequence of his narcissism driving him to pursue the various things that we've heard about, it's entirely conceivable that this is something that he did, that the evidence of the civil servants is accurate, and once again there's an exposure that it could well be the case that Andrew sought a happy ending and you ended up paying for it. What a lovely thought for you to end with. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.